Cut the front of this thing off. All right. We are rolling. Okay, I'll just cut the front of this off. Sorry, Joe. Sorry to make you edit. This is me apologizing to myself. And away we go. Welcome to Classic Movie Salon. We are here after a couple of week break due to holidays and technical things. Colleen Costello, who's today, it's her birthday. Shh, don't tell anybody. She'll supposedly be here in the second hour. We'll find out.
Right here.
But with me at the moment is Matthew Ward and Tachi, who is in Las Vegas. Matthew is not in Las Vegas. If you are, you're in the most quaint part of Vegas.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Nice to see you both. Tachi, what you're?
I couldn't be in a less Las Vegas place, could I?
Exactly.
Rural England, in an armchair with a cup of tea.
I don't even think you could find a room that looks like that in Las Vegas. Just
not at all.
Behind you. Anyway.
Not at all. It's entirely too muted for Las Vegas.
I do have quite a loud crocheted blanket to zhuzh things up a bit. Would that
There
help?
you go. That's Vegas right there.
Yeah.
Keep that
Vegas
on the screen
crocheting.
and you'll fool us all.
That would definitely help.
And there's Jill's Vegas silver show boots.
Oh, well, that.
Oh, there you go. That
Actually,
right there.
that is very Vegas.
That's very Vegas.
That would
yes.
work. Or Devo cover band.
This is what Neil Armstrong wore for going to shows in Las Vegas.
I like that you just happen to have all these props nearby.
I feel like there's a small conveyor belt of props going by. Have I shown you the shoe?
Exactly.
That's one small step for man and one giant dance step for mankind.
So, Tachi, you're in Las Vegas, which is not where you normally are.
No.
What's going on?
Well, first allow me to do jazz hands to represent Las Vegas. And then I am here for two concurrent conferences. I'm here for NAB, which is the National Association of Broadcasters show. See, I'm actually press. And then I am also here for I'm also here for the Broadcast Education Association, which is like the educational arm of BEA. And so we deal with teaching broadcasting in higher ed, so at the university level.
Very cool. And how long are you out there?
I'm going to be here till next Saturday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I'm going to be here for a little while.
A week in Vegas, you're going to lose track of time and history and everything.
Which is fine. I just need to lose track of time and space. That's okay with me.
That's the place to do it, a place with no windows.
Will you see the weekly show where they crash a great big transporter plane down Vegas Strip and Nicolas Cage gets out? What day of the week does that happen?
I'll have to look in the book they gave me at the hotel, and then I'll get back to you.
Yeah, that'd be good to see.
So, Tachi,
good to see.
Are you going to be hitting casinos or shows, or are you just all conference all the time?
Oh, no. Shows are my thing. So I must see at least 3 while I'm here. So I've made a good dent in Cirque du Soleil, but there are some I have not seen, so I think I'm going to go for that. I love the Cirque shows all the way down to the cheesy little Vegas shows. I love those too. So, I don't do gambling. Okay, I do like maybe $5, and when I lose it, that's it. You're not getting any more of my money. But
so you're Vegas's worst customer.
Oh, absolutely. They hate to see me coming. Here she comes, not spending any money.
Perfect. And Matthew Ward, where have you been traveling the last couple of weeks?
I've been around the most un-Vegas-y bits of the world, which have been beautiful, rural and seaside England. I've been to a place called Clevedon, which has the most gorgeous Victorian pier. A pier, for those who live in the middle of a continent, is an elegant iron-framed structure which pokes out into the sea with a boardwalk on top, and you can parade up and down. And on the end of it, it has some wonderful Art Nouveau tea rooms, which are really, really pretty. I had tea there, which was lovely. I was down in the southwest of England to do various things, including to be at the grand opening of my friend's new shop. And it's a brand new shop in a very old building. The building is something like 750, 760 years old.
Wow.
Which for a shop is kind of old. Even for England, that is old for a shop.
That's very old.
Yeah.
You can
And
you can hand the frequent shopper cards from generation to generation.
that's right.
And you could save up all your points for 700 years, and boy, would you be able to, you could buy the store probably.
Mm. And it started, the first reference to it is the year the Black Death arrived. So I think there's probably 10% off of Black Death victims. Which is good. I'm not sure what the affiliate code is for that. I'll find that out. And just mention my name.
Some dark
Thank you.
humor.
I'll pass that on.
But it's an amazing building because it's got this 700 years of history in, which are only just been found out. Because like with so much of history, it was covered over in cement and plaster for several hundred years. And in the last year or two, when they restored the building, they found it all. So I've been researching the history of it.
Wow.
And it's got this amazing history where it was a friary, then it was a school for a few hundred years, and then Henry VIII sent his henchmen in to suppress it. And then it went through various guises until it eventually became a rather stylish shop that sells designer furniture now.
That sounds...
Wow.
Yeah. That sounds like the most absurd ending to that building's history.
Well, it goes quite well. Once they design the furniture, it's what my friends do is they get old pieces of furniture and they zhuzh them up. I mean, you heard of the shabby chic thing?
Yeah.
This is chic but not shabby, so it's really nice. They'll paint things and stencil them and do nice things on them. So turning old tatty piece of furniture into new stylish bits of furniture. So it goes well with the shop.
Very cool.
But if you want a guided tour, have a look on my Periscope, and I did a guided tour of the shop showing these amazing historical features.
Wow. That sounds awesome.
Including a Noah's Ark painting that dates from about 500 years ago. That's on the wall still.
So that was right after the Ark had gone on its journey. That was painted.
Yeah, the Ark hadn't crashed that long then. That was pretty remarkable. And then I went down to Clevedon and Portishead and Bristol. So yeah, been here, there, and everywhere. It's been nice.
Very nice. And what's on deck for you in the coming weeks? Where are you headed?
Funnily enough, with this talk of 500 years ago, I'm organising a commemoration of the Reformation, which is 500 years old this year. Gosh, doesn't it just seem like yesterday, when it all began?
Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So birthday party for the Reformation, we're organising that. So we're going to be creating a piece of drama for that, which is slightly Renaissance-y, slightly medievally, with more than a touch of Brecht about it. So it'll be slightly Brechtian drama.
Very cool.
So it's going to be combining various different theatre styles, but it's going to be basically compressing 50 years of history, 1517 to 1567, into an hour or two's drama. And it's fun, includes all the things that people like, people being burned to death. With bonuses of, at the end, 2 dead people being burned to death.
So is that just to make sure?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it was a pretty nasty thing to do. It shows you're really angry with somebody if they've been dead for a few years. If you dig them up and set fire to them, it really annoys them. But it was also thought to guarantee eternal damnation, so it was a pretty cruel thing to do.
Wow.
Eternal damnation for who? The burned or the person doing the burning?
Oh, the person who was burned, yes. I mean, the same with most of these forms of execution, whether it's hang drawn and quartering or burning at the stake. It was a way of ensuring that you went to a horrible place for eternity, or at the very least, it stopped you going to heaven.
I'm sure it stopped the person who did it from going to heaven too.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be fair, I mean, I'm absolutely against capital punishment, but you've got to admire it's completely effective. These 2 dead guys, after they were burned, they never did anything ever again.
It's true.
Yeah. So
I'm sure.
reoffending is way down. Yeah. And
Yep.
the sad thing, of course, slipping onto the naughty step slightly, of course, this week, one of the American states, was it Alabama or Arkansas? I think I'm there anyway, decided to try and execute a load of people. I know they've succeeded with one of them, and I don't know what the rest of the chaps are like. And the chap who they did execute claimed his innocence as well, right until his dying breath.
Right.
So things that were barbarous 500 years ago are still being even more barbarous today.
No, you're absolutely right. And the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah.
And history is just apparently a big stupid circle.
Which we'll find out in hour 2.
Exactly. One thing we are going to be talking about All the President's Men later on, which I own on DVD. Fancy, I know you say.
Hey.
But it is.
That's a shame, really. You should have it on a big top-loading video cassette player.
One of the laser discs?
Yes. No,
Remember those with the big square video
Betamax.
cassette?
Oh, yes.
You need, either VHS or Betamax.
No, I'm talking ones before then. I remember we used to have one where the cassette was a square about this big, and it top-loaded. And you press the button.
Like the 3/4-inch tape?
Like
I don't know, yeah, it's fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and you put the thing in, and you pressed it down, and when you pressed the eject button, it went, boom!
You were fancy, because not many people had those back then.
No, we weren't fancy. We were given it very second-hand by a friend of ours who happened to run the audio-visual department from the university. So he was very good at getting stuff thrown out from the university that was going to go in the skip, but go to us. So we had it when everybody else was on VHS and Betamax.
Okay, I get it.
So it's not like you could go rent a movie for that.
No, I mean, it was never designed for that. This was designed for, videoing your own stuff.
Right.
But it meant that, we had the capability of videoing stuff from TV, which was really exciting back in 1980, whatever it was.
Cool.
That's awesome.
You tell kids that today, I won't believe you.
True. I was listening to my friend Jackie Cation's podcast, The Dork Forest, and she gave me a shout out. So here I am giving her a shout out to you guys. Someone will know about it. But she told the story about, I guess, and someone else can confirm this, but apparently there's some part of Mormonism where someone who is Mormon can go to someone's grave and make them Mormon after death. And she was sort of pointing out how sort of inconvenient that would be for everyone involved. That's what, when you told me that story, that's what it reminded me of.
Okay.
Absolutely.
If they want to play that game, we will admit that they can do it. But then we will immediately, on the same logic, go and convert that person to being very, very gay after death.
Okay.
That seems fair.
If we want to go around, converting people, yeah.
And then we just have generation after generation of ridiculous hit lists that have to be handed down. So here's the deal. When this guy dies, all right, you have to go to his grave and make him Mormon. And then here's what's going to happen. His son is going to make you gay after you die. So it's going to go on for generations. So be ready.
This is the kind of thing that went on in ancient Rome and before then. It's just ridiculous. Yes, well, this dead emperor is now a god. What?
Wow.
Converting people after they're dead. Nonsense. This is why we had a reformation, to get rid of all this stupidity. Let's have another one.
We need it.
Well, whenever it comes to religions that have things that seem odd, of course, they always seem odd to the people who aren't part of that religion. But fundamentalist Christian snake handlers have always been a brand of Christianity that I've never understood. In the idea being that if you handle a serpent, a snake that is poisonous, and he does not bite you, or she, as the case may be, that you're all good with God. And whenever I hear that, I'm like, who brings the snakes? Whose job is it to bring the snake? And if they're if they're short on snakes, they're like, no services today. I forgot the snakes.
Oh.
I love the idea of a sort of Midwest diner type thing with a roller skating waitress telling people what the specials is. Well, we've got vipers today, we've got asps, but we're all out of pythons.
and the
Sorry,
thing is,
pythons.
And people have been bit by a snake during these services and died, which like top guy priest or head snake handler or whatever.
Yeah.
Does the person in charge ever handle a snake? That's what I want to know.
I believe so.
Really?
Yes, I believe so. I'm not an expert on snake handling in religion, but I believe so. Yes.
Nuts, isn't it? And the same people, of course, condemn, I don't know, people for wearing burqas or other people for doing other things. Those crazy people go around wearing burqas. What do they think they're doing? Well, at least they're not getting snakes to bite themselves, It's all crazy.
Yeah, and that's the thing when it comes to freedom of speech and freedom of religion, when the religion's kind of wacky. You don't want to offend anybody's beliefs, but maybe back off on the snakes.
Just a tad.
I think
just roll it back a bit, maybe to worms or something. Same kind of shape. It isn't going to cause the same damage. Caterpillar, possibly.
It's just a very odd. Whenever sports come into play with sports, with religion comes into play with sports, with politics, with George W. Bush said that God told him to run for president. I don't know if he told anybody else the same thing.
No, just George, just him.
Just George.
That's connected up 3 different thoughts at the same time. That's really bizarre. Thought number 1, Matthew's first law of human behavior comes into play. Matthew's first law of human behavior is any action, no matter how weird or bizarre, if you thought of it or described it in any way, it will have happened. So somewhere out there is a religious movement which use the Very Hungry Caterpillar book as their Bible. So there's fact number 1.
Are you kidding?
There must be. I've said it, therefore it must exist.
Okay.
Logically.
Using that logic, yes.
Rules of the game.
I mean, look, there's a group of people in the South Pacific near Fiji who view Prince Philip, the Queen's husband, as a god. So, come on, having the Very Hungry Caterpillar as your Bible, isn't quite so crazy in comparison. So, somebody must do it.
And I like the Very Hungry Caterpillar, so I wouldn't mind that.
Yeah, that'd be nicely harmonious. I like that religion. Yeah. Second thought, you mentioned the orange chappie.
Mm-hmm.
That's connected with another thought I've had the other day about Periscope. Periscope was called Periscope because the idea was that you were letting people see the world through your eyes. You were holding it up like a periscope in a submarine, not Periscope, and everyone can see through it. But 99% of stuff that goes on Periscope is not letting the world see what you can see with your eyes, but is actually mirror, not Periscope. It's people going mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all, and talking to a mirror.
Right.
Exactly.
And that ties in with Donald Trump. Donald Trump has a mirror in front of him called Twitter, sometimes Periscope, usually Twitter, that he talks to like a mirror, and his mirror told him to run for president. His mirror tells him what to do. He's the crazy man with the Dorian Gray talking picture.
Absolutely.
So if George Bush said that God told him to run for president, well, it's the same with Donald Trump. His God, his mirror, his reflected image, told him to run, and he's running the world that way.
And the way language gets used and continues to get used and bent around, it's past the point of satire. It's so ridiculous how fast it happens and how repeatedly it happens. But also, again, in terms of the long game and seeing what happens in the future, I think that the response to a lot of the stupidity will eventually, hopefully, be for the better. But no time soon, apparently. No time soon.
Mm.
Nope.
We're just swirling down into the abyss.
It seems a little bit. I was always under the assumption that there were things that would stop things from happening, and apparently that is not the case. So,
Sorry to
look at the
disappoint
bright
you,
side.
Joe.
well, I thought there was some kind of check and balance on this level of power, and with this level of stupidity mixed with it, I thought maybe this won't be the way it is. Totally.
But it could be worse. Today we've got the election in France, so you know potentially you could have a Nazi running a major Western democracy, and then a month after that we've got elections in the UK, and goodness knows what's going to happen. So yeah,
right.
We're going to hell in a giant sequined handcart.
A sequined handcart.
Well, I'm keeping with this sort of show tunes Vegas kind of thing.
So okay, I like that. There you go. There you go.
Because if you go into hell in a handcart, you don't mind so much if it's got sequins and sparkles and feathers. Be nice.
Can't hear you, Tachi.
Until they melt on the way down.
Well, that's
Yeah, that's true. You'd have to have asbestos sequins or something, but I don't know if that would pass the risk assessment. That's a good point. I'll have to investigate that. There must be some fairly flame-proof sequins that don't cost too much.
I'm sure.
Must
We'll
be-
check Party City.
Probably Mylar, the stuff that NASA use on the satellites.
oh yeah,
That's true. That's true.
some kind of spacesuity stuff.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I'm down with that.
Yeah. I think, and speaking of NASA, I think we need the astronauts to have a makeover. This boring white suit thing they've been wearing for what, 50 years now? Come on, let's update it. Let's have some sparkles. Let's have some style.
I agree.
So, yeah, sequins. I get it. I would do that.
Tachi, would you like to design a spacesuit?
I could. I would definitely design a spacesuit complete with, and not just sprinkles or sparkles or sequins. It would have intricate beading on it.
Mm.
So it would be an art piece.
I like the idea of behind the helmet having a sort of big peacock fantail arrangement, like a sort of big Vegas showgirl thing or a Mardi Gras float thing, you know.
That they could open or close at will, basically. Yeah.
Or it just opens and closes as they breathe. Just keeps going.
Oh, yeah.
Like Gil.
Like a weird peacock
Mm.
in space.
And I know they have these EVA things, the sort of little jet things that jet them about. They can be gesture controlled. They have to be controlled by jazz hands. I want to go forward. And then space has become more appealing. People get more interested in it instead of it just being boring white suits. I mean, white suits are so 1970s, aren't they? They really are.
60s for that matter.
60s, yeah.
Yeah, that's what the Bee Gees were wearing all those years ago. You know, let's go with it.
True. Most of whom are dead.
Yeah, there you go.
And speaking of Bee Gees, what about the shock revelation that Barry Manilow is actually gay? Who would have thought?
Who knew?
Who knew?
I mean,
Actually, who didn't know?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Not only that, I mean, I guess it was something like he thought he would be rejected by his fan base. And keep in mind, somebody who's famous back when he got really famous, understand it because he was, you know, I bought my mom for 5 or 6 years in a row. I bought her a Barry Manilow album for Christmas, and it turned into like a running joke because she always knew. And I'd start wrapping it in boxes that didn't make it not look like an album, and
A proper black circular album.
right. But I think if well, again, it's like when I look at Queen, the band, and see Freddie Mercury prancing about being a rock star, and all these guys are like, you know, yeah, we are the champions, and it's the construct gets a little lost in there. Or also now the lead singer of Judas Priest came out in the last few years.
Wait, Judas Priest?
Judas Priest, the metal band?
Yeah, I didn't. The lead singer of Judas Priest?
Yeah, it came out.
How did I not
maybe like
know
3
this?
years ago, something like that.
How did I not know this?
I don't know.
Oh,
I guess
wow.
I guess Barry Manilow told me. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
But to try to see it from Barry Manilow's point of view in the 70s, to come out as gay would not be good for business, nor the 80s
Absolutely.
for that matter. And when you make your living in the public eye, you know, you have to choose, and it costs you money to make that choice in public,
Right.
and continues to for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. Particularly when you talk about certain genres of music, like in hip hop, it's so still totally not acceptable, even though hip hop is completely homoerotic in a lot of cases and has been shown over and over again. But the one who's only, there's not even anybody that's really a mainstream hip hop person that I know that has come out. But for example, like in R&B, Frank Ocean, he finally, came out, but it's not something that's easy. Even in 2016, 2017, you're still persecuted, especially by certain communities. So it's understandable even today.
Yeah, especially when there's laws being passed and bent around and fought and all the rest of it for anybody who's gay in the United States. It's crazy, but still going on. All of it's crazy, but this is who we are.
You know the penguin trouser thing that some of these young hippity hoppity chaps wear.
Hippity hoppity.
Penguin trousers? Can you please explain? I have no clue.
Well, I've noticed these hippity hoppity young men. They tend to wear their trousers very, very low, which makes them look like penguins. So that
Penguins, yes.
So they have some large extent of underpants.
Yeah.
And then their trousers start at kind of crotch level and descend lower. So it makes them look like penguins with short legs.
Yeah. Yes. Well, you know where it comes from, right?
Well, is it something to do with prisons and availability for man-on-man activities?
Well, that's what it's become, a symbol. It's become something symbiotic not symbiotic, symbolic rather, in prison. But that started because you can't have belts in prison. And so often people's pants were falling down because of that. So that really comes from prison culture. That's something that was taken by the youth and people on the outside as a symbol of something that's cool and hard, and somebody that's gone to prison has arrived, quote unquote. So they emulate everything this person does. But that's definitely from prison culture. And so it doesn't matter how many times you try to tell people, dude, that's from prison culture. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't
so
matter.
It's, yeah.
Yeah, and it's hilarious when I've seen a middle-aged white guy doing it. So,
oh gosh, yeah.
With the underwear hanging out.
But when they
hate it.
Oh yes, when they have the penguin trousers and of course a large baseball cap,
right?
From the side, the silhouette is a penguin with the baseball cap.
Yeah,
been the bill. Yeah, it's very odd.
You're absolutely correct. Only you would have thought about that, Matthew Ward. I never thought about that. But no, you're absolutely correct.
And all that stuff started in the 90s.
Yeah,
because big pan stuff.
The big pan stuff. Yeah, exactly. It's just ridiculous. Besides hating what it represents, I just don't like the way it looks.
Right. Well, it will always slow you down. Like it's not clothing meant for activity.
Well, some of these people don't know that, because I've seen several people trying to run from the police and their pants are around their ankles because they don't have a damn belt. Now,
really?
Your style, yes, absolutely. There's been a couple of cases where that's happened. I'm like, well, now your style choices and your longing to be cool have done you in. How did that work for you now? So, what I don't agree with is trying to legislate that. There are a couple of municipalities who are trying to legislate or have codes against people sagging their pants. What you won't do is tell people how they should dress or what is appropriate in terms of dress in the streets. You can't tell people that. I don't like what it represents, but I'm sure as hell not going to legislate somebody else's right to do that.
That's how it was done back in the day. How do I make myself appear in the middle? There we go. Yeah. Yeah. Sammy and David together.
Wow.
So you never saw Sammy's trousers sagging down?
No, because his belt was over his navel.
Yeah.
Well, the pants were really high-waisted back then.
Well, sometimes
And,
you look, some of the movies we've watched when there was, I'm trying to remember which movie it was, but the suits were like, you know, the pants were practically right up to like just below nipple level. It was ridiculously high. I'm sure comfortable and breathes.
It's not ridiculously high. The historic waist of a gentleman is up there. It's basically at the bottom of your rib cage, where the man's waist was for most of history.
When did it start dropping to a level where you could breathe?
That's what I think. So
1800s?
And the first reforms really were with Beau Brummel. He cut the breeches in a lot tighter than they were before, but still the waist was fairly high. Really, you know, all the way into the 20th century. You know, it's probably in the 1960s, really, it started to fall, because even 1950s suits were fairly high.
Wow. That's funny.
So yeah, probably as recently as the 1950s.
wow.
So I can find
And then they came out with the crazy low ones.
yeah.
We're just pretty much like there has to be some grooming involved to be able to wear the pants.
Yes. There's no middle ground, it seems. They're either way too high or way too damn low.
I mean, there's a guy from the 1940s. You see how high the waist is on those. You know, it's
yeah, that's like
very high.
Zoot kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't look cool.
Yeah. Zoot suit.
But you could have wore that suit in the 1990s and fit right in.
Yeah.
True. Because when you start to look at, and I keep going back to hip hop, but when you start to look at a lot of the music videos, there were a lot of people, Kwame was very guilty of that. Heavy D and the Boys wore that a lot. So there was this whole kind of return to quote unquote the Zoot suit, or return to gentlemanly type of dressing before gangster rap came back in, you know, or came in. So you see that. So yeah, that's absolutely. And in the 90s, you would have seen it with polka dots. So,
and it's really funny to see what has happened to like Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre and all. And what? Oh, that's another Zoot suit.
That's Cab Calloway, showing how it's done.
Oh yeah! Wow.
now he looks like. Remember, I don't know if you've ever seen well, not that you've never, but Tom and Jerry, when they have certain episodes. There was one episode in particular where they had the Zoot suit.
Yep.
That's exactly what Jerry's suit looked like, and some of the other cats, and it looked like it was modeled off of what you just showed us.
Yeah, off Cab, yeah, it would be, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny to see what has. Oh, here we go, another one. Oh yeah.
Terrible bow tie though.
Yeah. A little bit.
And it makes you look shorter than you really are, which I mean is not really a problem. But if you're aiming for a long, lean look, that's not it.
Yeah.
But to see what has happened, what has happened with Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg in terms of both their success, but also, especially with Snoop Dogg, how many endorsements someone who was, you know, such a badass back in the day, literally, to have him now be like when he was doing a commercial for Chrysler with Lee Iacocca, at on a golf course, it was just kind of like worlds colliding, and now it's, you know, everybody knows who Snoop Dogg is. He's been around forever. I mean, he's a cultural reference and a punchline at some level too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing, and I don't fault people, because Ice Cube, it's the same thing with him.
Yep.
Because, you know, they're all like former
Ice
NWA members.
T.
Ice-T,
Yep.
exactly the same. There is not the level of longevity in hip hop. I mean, in the entertainment game in general, it's really difficult, but hip hop in particular doesn't have longevity because styles change, styles of flow and such change. And when it goes from region to region, you have differences within hip hop. So because of that, it's almost impossible to say, I'm going to be a lifelong rapper, because you're going to look stupid at 50 trying to make current records. What you need to be doing then is touring to
Doing
talk
your
about
own
what you
stuff.
did, doing your own stuff. Yes, or so this is why people have started to transition into if they're not producing music or producing artists, they're doing something on the television side or doing something on the film side. That's actually how Ice Cube started. Transitioning in film with Boys in the Hood, and then just eventually producing, etc. So you evolve as an artist, and there's nothing wrong with hip hop or having hip hop as your roots, but at some point you're like, yeah, I want to continue to eat. I need to see how I can reinvent myself.
Yeah, I'm saying that it's amazing that that can even happen.
It's true.
For someone who used to be, seen as such a horrible influence on everyone that they would come into contact with, children and otherwise, to now have them be a household name, and in Dr. Dre's case, a billionaire. That's tough to imagine in the 90s.
Dr. Dre's a billionaire.
Yeah.
But does he still remain true to the streets?
Yes, he does.
But the streets paved with gold.
Well, I don't. Probably not, which is why he's a billionaire. Because it also seems like, and I don't know, because I'm an old white guy. I'm not plugged into what the kids are doing, but it seems like the flaunting of wealth is a tiny little bit less now. Not a lot. I mean, everybody still has great sneakers and all that, but it seems like the gold-plated Bentleys and that kind of thing have maybe backed off a little bit.
You know what I think, though? I think that's also a result of knowing that this kind of stuff doesn't last forever, particularly if you come from a background where you are not taught good money management skills, or there's not even the concept of what having this type of money means. So you don't invest it well. You go and help everybody that says they need help because that's what you do, and you end up bankrupt. So I think there's now, as years have gone on, there's a little more savvy. Not much, but a little more savvy when it comes to these types of things. So now you've got these billionaires that are coming up, like you've got Dre. You've also got Jay-Z. If I'm not mistaken, Jay-Z and Beyonce are billionaires. So you've got a little more savvy when it comes to finances or finance than before.
But also, being an entrepreneur is a little more cool now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Than it was in the 90s. It was still like what do you want to own a business for?
Which is such stupidity, but
yeah,
that type of thinking.
But the value was to blow up to the point where you're so rich that, like Ice-T said in a lyric, "I'll never go broke. I got property," and that was 1990. He was saying that. So I think the idea of the kind of the mogul, and especially since being a label mogul isn't really an opportunity anymore. That's what everybody was doing. And now that's like, I would love to get into something that's not profitable. What do you got? How about music? That'd be great.
Exactly. Exactly. The music industry has really seriously taken a hit when it comes to that type of thing. These, like you said, the music moguls of old are not a factor anymore. It's just impossible. And the internet started to do away with that when Napster and some of these other sharing sites came up that showed you how easy it is to replicate and get stuff out there, and then how people wanted to do things a la carte. I don't feel like buying your album with 12 songs for $18.99 because I only like one, when I could just get it over here. So the music industry evolved to that. Otherwise, they were just going to do the same thing they were always doing.
Yeah, and there's no reason that they should change. I remember Seth Godin talking about the music industry in the 70s and how it was the perfect industry because the radio played the product for free. The labels paid off the radio stations to play the product, that you would listen to the product while you drove to the store to buy the product because the only way you could hear the product other than on the radio was to buy it. And then you can wear it out for a while, there was, you know, you could wear an album out, wear a 45 out, you'd have to buy another one. And then cassette CDs every time people were replacing things. But now when it's to the point where, like, I don't remember the last time probably was Mike Dowdy, who's a total indie artist, was the last time I bought a CD. I like live on Spotify, and to me, it's like having, remember back at Tower Records, you could go and there'd be a listening station. You could go through.
Yeah.
I loved Tower Records. There was just something about spending the day in that store that was so, I don't know, fulfilling and nostalgic. To this day, I still love record stores.
Yeah, me too. And bookstores. And I was in Boston. There was a great Tower Records right on Newbury Street and Mass Ave, and a great bookstore. I'm blanking on the name of it. It was a used bookstore. It was a really good one right near it. But yeah, the idea of going to a listening station and trying to, you know, go through the CD that cost $18.99 to figure out if you want to buy it or not. And now to have Spotify, and it's just like having Tower Records listening station, you know, inside your house. And I know that's a generational awareness, but the value of music now is just like it doesn't have that. You know, I know vinyl's come back, and now people are making special vinyl and special packaging and that kind of thing, which is really cool. But when that was the standard, that's what the behavior was. Right. And now that it's all playlists and streaming and not even an MP3 a lot of times, that sense of ownership. You know, you used to have your record collection sort of on display, and when you had people over, they would judge you by your record collection.
Right.
Yeah.
Like immediately.
And the size of your music center.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Or your speakers, even if your music center wasn't.
Absolutely. And the type of stereo.
Oh, yeah. Definitely true. And how loud it can be. But the interesting thing is to see how, so now that we are at the point where in Dr. Dre and Jay-Z's case, I know they're involved in a bunch of other businesses, but they're both involved in profitable parts of the music industry that, like, the only profitable parts left is to set up your own thing and to get to, well, Dr. Dre sold it to Apple, and I believe Tidal's mostly owned by Jay-Z, and he sold off a couple of chunks of it.
Yes.
But it's still profitable, and like a lot of people bet against that too. Oh, that's
hey, Matt.
That's Matt Carmen. Hey, Matt, thanks for dropping by. We'll be talking about the movie momentarily. But it's kind of interesting to be able to see the history of it all, and to see people who sold the brand of being, you know, criminal badasses to now being really, really, really successful business people who are running giant organizations that, you know, the biggest company in the world buys Dr. Dre's beats.
That's true.
It's really cool to see that how much things have changed, and how none of it really mattered. Like, I tripped over something that was a music thing when Tipper Gore was talking about, you know, all the horrible things that happens with music. Hey, Marilyn. And you can type in the chat, Matt. But seeing her, you know, seeing the 80s clothes and the 80s, you know, Bad Resolution video, and then hearing her, what she's saying about music, and then to see what happened, you know, in terms of like 30 years plus. What happened? Nothing happened, lady. Like, still, right. Like, is this enough proof for you? You were out of the video games? No, sorry. People aren't violent because of video games. No, something else going on. Sorry. Same with music. They're not. I never understood the logic of playing it backwards. So,
I was about to say that, backwards masking. So the good old days when we had that.
So you could hear what Satan wanted you to do, or
that is so foolish. There's so many other things you can spend your energy combating besides that? I think the whole thing is I mean, it's been proven to have effects on children, media, and it's been
Oh,
proven.
sure.
However, that's young minds who have not fully developed, number one. And number two, there's something else, like you said, Joe, going on. It's not just that. So it's not just that you're playing a violent video game and all of a sudden you want to go postal. That's not it.
Right.
Which is a terrible term. I forgot.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But it's
yeah,
but it's a great shorthand for what you're talking
for
about.
what I'm saying, exactly.
But we've all known, crappy kids who had really nice parents, in terms of meeting them, really nice, but in terms of them actually, not being a good parents, either that or there was something going on with a kid that their skill set could not handle.
Right. Absolutely.
That's my guess.
Well, I mean, look on the bright side. The kids start listening to this hippity-hoppity music and then get into drugs and violence and get shot down in a street battle. At least somebody will convert them to being a Mormon after they've died.
And thus they are saved.
Call back. I just want to say thanks to Marilyn Matt Carmen for dropping by. And Matt Carmen apparently is here twice. I don't know how he's made of magic.
Hey guys.
And we'll be talking about All the President's Men coming up in a little bit. We're doing our jam session where we talk about stuff, different things.
Yes.
Yes.
But no jam, ironically.
Yeah,
No jam.
We never discussed jam. That's not good.
What
Hey,
if-
Marilyn.
What if marmalade?
One thing that I will, because I know Tachi's got to fly. One thing I will say, at least about the movie in general and where we are now, I know the media is a business and is for profit, but I wonder what would have happened if there wasn't two reporters from the Washington Post who cracked all that.
Good question.
There was an investigation going on. It wasn't just them. But yeah, the chances are that it probably wouldn't have come out and Nixon probably would have survived.
Yeah, I think
Wow.
that's exactly what would have happened. And really my first consciousness of a president was Nixon. So all I heard was, politicians are criminals.
Right.
And it was very accurate advice. It was very accurate advice that I still believe and have never stopped believing since then. But because I think there is some degree of acting involved in the job of being a political leader, and lying is part of the job. It's part of the job. But also knowing when to put your hand on your heart and knowing when to, knowing where to stand, knowing all the things that you're supposed to know when you're president. Also, that's kind of an expectation too. That apparently ended.
I mean, there's a possibility actually we wouldn't be here now, because at one point Nixon called in a nuclear strike when he was president, but his staff didn't take the order because he was drunk at the time. And they said, we'll leave till the morning until he slept it off. And if he asks us when he's sober, then we'll think about it. But no, we'll just let him go to bed for the moment. So you never know. If Nixon had got away with Watergate, he maybe would have started a nuclear war. You never know. He's crazy enough to do it.
That's very true.
But on the whole, I think probably what would have happened if he'd have survived, Carter still would have got in, and then Reagan still would have got in. So I think the longer term effect may have been a bit less. I think there would have been just a short term difference.
True.
And also kind of surprising that with all the stuff that happened, and another thing to keep in mind at this point in history, that one term and you're back to you're back to I forgot what I was talking about. You're back to Democrats in office. I mean, Republicans in office.
Yeah.
C'est la vie. Okay, I'm going to run to my next session, guys.
All right, cool. Have fun.
What's your next session?
I will. The next session is actually a business meeting for the Multicultural Studies Division. So something that I'm part of, and I'm supposed to be there. So.
Oh, will you be doing Mediascope from Vegas?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I will be doing Mediascope from Vegas. I'll be scoping and streaming all this week from the show floor and, yeah, reporting live. So be sure to catch it. You'll be able to see some cool stuff. And this year, as I said, they have that 60-foot VR dome, and there's a special session in there.
Yeah.
So I will try and see if I can
cool.
stream it there so you guys can see.
Oh, nice.
Thanks, Marilyn. Take care, and take care, both Matthews and Joe.
All right,
Cheers.
Tachi. Have fun.
Bye.
Right. Yeah, Tachi's scopes from these conferences are always so good because it's always Big Bang Theory territory with all these nerdy blokes who got no social skills, and then when they've been quizzed by a woman, it's like, oh my God, it's a woman. She's talking to me. She's got an opinion. What do I do?
So
I love Tachi's scopes from these conferences. It's such
I
fun.
look forward to catching that one. Let's jump into the movie. I am guessing that you had seen this before today's viewing, because I definitely have.
Oh yeah, I mean, loads of times. Yeah, it's one of these all-time great movies everyone must watch. It's a great movie in so many ways.
And it's the one thing when you're watching this, and I'd be interested to hear someone who is, a teenager or in their 20s even, watching this movie because I was a kid when Nixon was president, to have like what their view of Nixon is, because he was essentially buried a hero no matter what, because that's what you're supposed to do. And he made everything great with China. Yeah, that was better. Still a criminal, still did a bunch of criminal stuff, still didn't go to jail, still had to get pardoned. But because we know the history of the story, watching the movie, there is a little bit of there's a spoiler right at the start, like you're not on the edge of your seat wondering if they're going to do it. You're wondering, how the hell did they pull this off?
Yeah. So how did it, not who did it?
Yeah, exactly. And watching this, it really, I worked as a PI for 11 years, nothing glamorous, just intellectual property stuff. But that idea of like connecting the dots and calling people and getting like one name or a company name or something from somebody human that leads to somewhere else was the fun part of the job, was the putting the little mystery together and trying to, especially if you had to really find someone who didn't maybe want to be found, made it a lot more difficult. And watching these guys with rotary phones,
yeah, gosh, yeah,
they must have had calluses on their index fingers.
That's right. I mean, that's the lovely thing about the movie. There's so much depth to enjoy about it, because first of all, it's a record of what went on in Watergate, and for those that can't remember, Watergate was a situation whereby Nixon, the president of the United States, got a team of thugs to burgle the Democratic Party to try and get some dirt on them and affect it, and to basically rig the next election. And they got found
suits.
out.
And suits. The burglars are in suits. That's the part
suits.
I loved.
Yeah. The inept burglars. That was the other thing. They were completely inept. And then the movie's about the investigating this and how they managed to trail together the evidence that linked this burglary all the way to the top of the presidency and got the president out of office. So that's the history of it. So it tells that history. But it was also a documentary in a way of, as you mentioned, what investigative journalism was like in the early 1970s. And the attention to detail of the movie making comes into play there, because if you look at pictures of Bernstein and Woodward, the real Bernstein and Woodward, in their office, and you look at the movie set, it's identical. They were obsessive with detail. And so all the stuff that was going on in terms of the practicality of finding information, the movie showed it how it was. The tedious stuff of going through shelf after shelf of phone books. I mean, people younger than us, they've never seen a phone book.
Yep.
And the thought of having to go through them. I mean, I remember I worked in terrible telemarketing jobs back in the 80s or the early 90s. And yeah, we still had phone books then, and going through phone books line by line. And there was enough phone books just from the UK. I just couldn't even comprehend how big a library you'd need for all the phone books in the United States. And the thought of having to go through the whole of the US's phone book library just to find out somebody's name. When today, you just get your iPad or your phone and go, oh, there they are. Yeah, that's fine. Oh, they're on Facebook. There's their life story.
Yeah, exactly. I had to do the phone book thing once, Yellow Pages, because when you're trying to find a first use of a trademark, and granted, I stopped doing PI stuff 7 years ago, so this was earlier than that. But if you are looking for trademark usage of a company logo, some companies are still buying Yellow Page ads. They still deliver them. I have no idea why, but I had to go through year after year after year in the same place, multiple boroughs, to see if and when they used it, or when they started using it, or when they stopped using it. And it's that, just like, you get in that mindset of just like, you have to really, really, really pay attention to something that's just so boring as hell, going through Yellow Pages over. And when they're the big thick ones, yeah, it's way more fun to just type something in Google. Way more fun.
And the idea of having to send someone, on a plane halfway across the states to find out a piece of information, when today it's just there it is. It's fantastic in that regard. So, I hope young people watch this for that part of the movie as well, just to remind them that all the stuff they take for granted today, what it was like in our childhood of trying to find information. You had to go into this really weird building full of books. It was called a library, and you had to find information in it.
And you had to know how to find the information.
Yeah.
There was a system. It wasn't just, hey, I'm looking for a book on seashells, and then it would magically fall into your hands. You had to look.
Yeah. Oh, microfilm readers. Do you remember those?
I did. The first feature film script I ever wrote was based on a hit and run that I happened upon and was stopped from photographing by the local cops. And I went back, and this must have been 99, and this happened in 84. But I was going through newspaper microfiche, and and I don't know how that's even done now. Like, because everything's digital, the idea of archiving something and having it be an accurate archiving, and then have it to be able to survive media change after media change in terms of whatever the operating systems are, or hard drives, or the format, or all the rest of it. It's the same with film. All those come into play, but yeah, it's so crazy slow.
Yeah, and there's a big issue now. What you brought up is the first few generations of computer stuff were in a huge problem because it's all unreadable. All the stuff that came after microfilm, all the different kind of floppy disks and big disks, nobody can read those anymore. All the early hard disks, can't read them. CDs, the early CDs and DVDs are now unreadable because the plastic on them degrades after time. And so there's a race against time to digitize stuff from 25, 30 years ago, when I can read a Tudor book from 500 years ago. I can read an inscription off a Roman temple from 2,000 years ago, still perfectly legible. But I can't read a floppy disk from when I was a student.
Yeah, I'm in the same position, and there was a documentary about the move from film to digital, and one of the directors is a big time, I can't remember who it was, one of the big time mainstream movie film directors. He started as a music video director in the 80s, and he said the number of formats that he used as a music director and commercial, he has all of them, but he does not have machines that can play any of them. Yeah. Because they don't make the machines anymore. And as far as I know, VHS, as of last year, they stopped making them. So, and I know, because I have some of them too, if you do have VHS, it is deteriorating, and you wouldn't believe how fast and how much, just because you have it sitting in a box and it hasn't and got really hot or really cold doesn't mean a damn thing. Once that tape hits heads, sometimes it just rips off. And so if you have something on VHS that you think that you really have, and it's the only copy you really, even if you have multiple VHS, because a friend of mine died who's a stand-up, and his wife had all of his VHS tapes from the 80s and 90s of his stand-up, and she wanted to digitize them. So I offered to help do it, and killed a VCR doing it. Had to buy a new VCR. This is a few years ago. But as I was, sometimes I would play the tape, and I learned this from making the mistake. I would immediately start digitizing, no matter what. As soon as you hit play, digitize, because you may not be able to play it again. It may play once, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Like that layer went off as the head flew by, and you'll never see it again. So yeah, if you have VHS tapes, get those things digitized.
The same with the early movies, the celluloid that just keep bursting into flames.
Right, the nitrate stuff.
Yeah, nitrate stuff. Yeah, yeah. There's a secret vault of the British film industry archive. It's somewhere in about 30 or 40 miles from London, and it's in an old ammunition store, basically. And so this film has to be stored in what were ammunition dumps, because every now and then it just goes.
Yep. Wow. That is, yeah. So the great thing about all this technology stuff is how fast everything you can do and investigate, but the problem with the speed is that archiving it and keeping track of it and backing it up and all of that stuff, it's, backing up letters was a lot easier.
Yeah.
And backing up an email, or backing up, again, so if you did have a music video that you wanted to play from the 80s, but didn't have the machine to play it, or maybe if you did play it, it would fall apart, then what we thought was this great technology and all the rest of it was always, and even hard drives themselves are temporary.
Yeah.
So there's nothing, archiving anything digitally is still a moving target, even after it's been backed up and archived.
Yeah, even if you archive it to a cloud, what format is it? PDF? How long can you read that PDF? Or do you have to keep going back and updating that same PDF to a new PDF? Yeah, you might as well, it's like trying to write into quicksand, it just keeps moving beneath your feet.
Yeah, Vampire Mob I cut on Final Cut Pro 7, and I keep two old G4 computers around to run it on, because it won't run with an emulator on my computer for whatever reason. But I can't access any of that footage any other way.
So yeah, there's this has all come from this. Just looking at all the President's Men and seeing the struggle to find information then, but at least that information didn't evaporate in front of them. Once they found it, it was there. That's one thing.
Yeah.
But here's the bizarre irony, of course. They spent, how long did they spend? About 2 years, 18 months on the Watergate investigation. And the outcome of that was the president downfalling. Now we're in a situation where the president is doing far worse things in public. Everyone knows he's doing it.
Yeah, that was the thing. As I'm watching this, I'm like, this is not, like, you do not have to dig too deep to find people doing stuff wrong. That should be, a burglary is nothing compared to treason. It's a little different. And why the
money laundering
and all the rest of it. But just the Russian stuff, just for that to have not got to the point. Well, it starts next week. They're going to start doing panels and investigations and talking to people about the whole Russia thing, and they're bringing Sally Yates back, and so that'll be interesting. But yeah, it seems, I guess the standard of crime was a little different in 73 than it is in 2017, because it seems like the crime is just done with almost pride.
But the difference between then and now is, of course, then the politicians of both sides were fiercely loyal to America and the Constitution. And so if the president steps out of line, their greater loyalty stepped in. But now you've got a situation in which all they care about is self-preservation, and they're feeding themselves. They don't give a monkeys about the country. They don't give a monkeys about the Constitution. So the only worry about the president is what the president doing going to harm them and stop them being elected and stop them being rich?
But I don't know how many of the Republicans who were party over country were that way because of what was going on with Nixon. Whereas, and they're not being, I guess that's the thing, is like there wasn't another option. It seemed like stuff stuck to you for the rest of your life or your career, where that doesn't happen now. And people forget things more quickly, and it doesn't seem to matter. And because there's just constant information. But the idea of manipulating an election and Watergate being that was the goal, and the goal with this manipulation is personal profit, I guess.
I mean, contrast that with an earlier generation, a British political scandal called the Profumo scandal. So this is during the time of JFK. John Profumo was the British Minister of Defence under Harold Macmillan, the Prime Minister opposite JFK. And John Profumo had a dalliance with somebody who was either a prostitute or prostitute-ish. And that person was also sleeping with a Russian spy, a defense attaché. And this got out, so John Profumo resigned, didn't just resign from the government, he resigned from Parliament, walked away into obscurity, and literally walked from his government office to a homeless shelter and volunteered then to swab the floors, and then did the rest of his working life working in a homeless shelter because he felt so ashamed about letting this country down. And he never ever sought office again and just worked for this charity for the rest of his working life. And yet nowadays, you know, people get a slap on the wrist and they go, yeah, whatever. I mean, a few years ago, it was like, oh, no, I'm terribly sorry. And then they'd come back after 5 years, I'd come back after 2 years. Now they go, yeah, well, whatever. So I did it. Now what are you going to do about it? I don't care. And nobody resigns. Nobody has any shame whatsoever.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's the combination of the lack of shame and also the short memory, and then the amount of information that's just constantly pouring in. And I think the other thing with looking at All the President's Men and 1973 and this story specifically is that there was that much less bandwidth for information. Like you were only going to get your information from a newspaper or a network news source. There wasn't any other way to get it. Now that there is way more information that is not accurate. And also it seems that language, that William Burroughs quote, "language is a virus from outer space," seems to be coming more true this year than at any other time, because it seems to be being manipulated. But so the idea of being able to get a major news source like the Washington Post even decide to put the resources, because they're a business too, into this story and have that be profitable and have that be, again, part of that very narrow bandwidth where you can get information. Now you're in a time where there's information everywhere. There's too much. And some of it's false, and some of it targeted to the people who are going to believe the false information. It's becoming even worse. Oh, and Marilyn says, I don't understand the political climate at all. Gary Hart's career, I remember this, was sunk by philandering, Harry Dean by his scream, but Trump goes on and on. Why are we as Americans forgiving Trump's multitudes of sin? Boggles my mind. I think it's well, it's too late because the only people who are going to decide to get them out are politicians. And if the majority party is more party than country, which is definitely the case, and everybody wants to get their thing, everybody, whatever their project is, whatever their little BS thing is that they need other people to vote for, so they're trading votes or trading influence or trading money or whatever, then they're all getting paid by lobbyists on top of that and all the other PACs and all the rest of it. And I think they get into the situation where it's a cycle that doesn't end and is never going to end until something really horrible like this happens. I hate to say, but and again, I think Trump's done far worse than Nixon ever did, based on what's known about what Nixon did. And Nixon did a lot of really bad, dumb stuff.
It kind of is a shoe event horizon of politics. I think I mentioned this, was it last week or the week before? This is Douglas Adams, one of his great theories in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That he noticed, even, when did he write this? 30 odd years ago, 40 years ago, that the nature of high streets was you had ever more shops selling the same kind of stuff, and so the competition drives quality downwards, and you end up with ever more of the economy producing ever lower garbage. And what he called a shoe event horizon was basically a whole economy being taken over by cheap shoe shops, which brings about the downfall of the economy. And it's like that with the political economy has sort of reached a shoe event horizon. We've tipped over into utter garbage land.
I agree.
And where's the savior? Where's the political messiah to lead people out of the wilderness on both sides of the Atlantic? And this isn't just the US problem. This is the same in the UK. Breaking news from France. Results of the first round of the French presidential election have come in. They have a system similar to the US political system, but you have several different people going for president, and so you end up with several rounds of elections. So this round of election has left two people standing in the field. A centrist called Emmanuel Macron, who got 23.7%, and he's going to face off Marine Le Pen, the fascist, who got 21.7%.
Pretty close.
Pretty close, yeah. But the idea is that anyone with a brain is going to swing behind Macron. So he's a person who is seen as a sort of political savior, political messiah to try and save people from the dross of a system. But we don't certainly have the equivalent in the UK. And one of the big failings in the United States is the lack of a leader of the opposition. In the UK, because we have a parliamentary democracy, not a presidential democracy, the Prime Minister is the leader of the party, and every week they've got to stand in front of Parliament and answer any question that comes. And they're questioned by the leader of the other party. So the alternative leader is always there in the public eye. And you always have the choice, do you want that person or this person? And you're always comparing them. But in the US, you've got nobody until the election season.
Very true.
So unless the political reform is done to bring about an effective leader of the opposition to stand up to the president, then we'll just keep spiraling downwards.
Well, I think to some degree that's true, but I don't know if it is an individual, like looking for a quote-unquote messiah or something along those lines.
It's not the messiah, it's a very naughty boy.
It seems less likely, and because everyone's interests are so interconnected that getting a bunch of people to go against what might be their political futures to do the right thing doesn't seem to be an option for anyone, because it's just too much. There's too much money. It's too you know, we have people who have been senators and congresspersons for 30 years, 40 years, which is ridiculous. But especially when you do have a term limits on the president, and with Trump playing the game, and this is the language as a virus thing is, and what they one thing that was throughout all the president's men was the non-confirmation confirmation, was the non-denial denial, was the, well, we're not going to say we didn't do it, but we're not going to say we did do it. We're just going to kind of talk around the truth. And that, and with Trump now, it seems like that happens by the second. Like he just keeps changing. There was some tweet he put out yesterday, and I read it, and I'm like, that is like, it's like a quadruple negative. Like you are moving what you mean around word by word in one tweet.
Yeah, it's not even a smoke screen, is it? There is no sort of word for it in the English language. It's the sort of an excrement screen, that because he talks in pure excrement.
Yeah.
You know, he isn't able to communicate in English. He can only speak excrement. That enables him to wriggle out of things because he can twist what he said because it doesn't make any sense. Oh no, I didn't mean that. I meant this. And you can't nail him down because his words are so imprecise. Yeah,
and that's the thing. And no one in the media apparently has the training to do follow-up questions. And also none of them want to work together to really hammer away at anybody. But also, this is the first time that we've had a White House that cuts off an entire network or cuts off a newspaper or cuts off anybody, and which is even more ridiculous. And again, goes back to all the president's men, when they are knocking on door after door after door and knocking on some people's doors more than once to get information, and people kind of get chipped away. Again, that doesn't seem to happen now. It seems like it's a lot easier to just shut the other person down and talk over them or answer a question they didn't ask you, and run the clock until no one has the attention span to pay attention to the point that you never answer the question and never will.
Or if you do answer the question, speak in diarrhea so they don't understand it.
Right. And also to keep in mind that that these two reporters weren't their top guys. They weren't political reporters. And I guess Woodward had only been there, according to the script, 9 months.
Yeah, that was the truth. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the story is that it was put on the job when it was just a minor break-in story. Oh, it's interesting. Yeah, the Watergate building, there's been a break-in, there's some guys in court. Who should we send? We'll send the most junior guy. And so they sent Woodward's the most junior, so that's how he was on the job. And then he noticed this detail that when the guy was being questioned by the magistrate, he said the word, or whispered the word CIA in a stage whisper. And Woodward said, "Oh, that's interesting." And then it all snowballed from there.
And even before that, when he was, and it was a great little sequence when he is kind of nagging the lawyer who is in constant denial that he's representing anyone, but he's a lawyer and he's in a courtroom for free. But he doesn't have any interest, and no one told him to be there. And they kept doing it. Like there was one shot where I think it's after the first or second interaction they have in the courtroom where Robert Redford's behind him, sort of, and they're talking quietly back and forth, and he has walked out a couple of times, and then he's standing in line at a water fountain, and you can see the visual empty space where Robert Redford walks into frame and just keeps going and going, and that's the thing that they do while they're investigating is get themselves into bigger trouble. Especially to the point where it's like, the whole Deep Throat thing, this unnamed source, I can't remember. Deep Throat was named at one point, I believe.
Yeah, he was named 3 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
a deputy of the CIA.
So that guy, for Bob Woodward, Robert Redford, to
Sorry,
have
FBI. Sorry.
take a couple of cabs and then meet him in a parking structure and stand in the shadows and be worried about every sound that comes around, and to play that game of, I'm not going to tell you, you've got to tell me what you got and I'll tell you if you're going in the right direction. And so between the reporters who are newish, Bernstein apparently is not, again, according to the movie, they were talking about firing him the month before. So he's really jamming to get on this story. He's really hustling and finding other information. And when it's a great little sequence where Redford types up a story, old school typewriters. And just actual paper. Actually, you have to white out stuff and correct it. But when he walks over to wherever, when he's handing in a story, and then you see Dustin Hoffman walk over and pick it up, take it back to his desk, and he watches him. Robert's watching him. And the other thing throughout the movie, there's a lot of visual breathing room in this movie, in that there are a lot of wide shots that they stick on for a long time. There's also shots they don't edit. Also a bunch of shots where they're running through the press room. But the whole sequence of them going back and forth, to the point where Redford walks over and he's like, what's going on? And Dustin Hoffman explaining is you're bearing your lead. This isn't the third paragraph. It should be in the first paragraph. And he is helping him, but he's being kind of a dick about it, but he's still helping him. And he agrees with him. He reads it and you're right. Your version's right. He reads his version. And then they get put together as a duo, to start working on the story together. And again, that Woodward and Bernstein for a really long time were kind of, and still to some degree are, journalistic heroes, are people who, they took a president down. And when you're counting on the FBI and CIA and all these other people to make sure people aren't doing something wrong, when two journalists have to do it, that's when you start realizing, hey, this is kind of a check and balance. It's sort of important.
Well, I mean, the Deep Throat was deputy at the FBI, so yeah, to a certain extent, they said the FBI took the president down, so that check and balance worked as well. But that style of filmmaking, the sort of documentary-ish style of it, helped with the realism of it, because you had felt that you were sitting in the newsroom at a desk typing away at your own typewriter, and you were seeing all this stuff going on. So, in addition to it being a great story and great performances, it's a well-made movie. It's a really good piece of work. But there's another detail I noticed, that if we compare Redford's Woodward with Dustin Hoffman's Bernstein, there's almost like a tectonic fault in movie making. Up until 70s, you typically had movie stars playing historical characters, real characters, and making absolutely no attempt to look like them or be them at all. It was just them on screen. John Wayne as Attila the Hun, was one of the ridiculous things. He just put on a different hat and a silly mustache. He wasn't doing anything apart from that. He was still John Wayne. John Wayne as a centurion in Greatest Story Ever Told. He was just a cowboy with a Roman helmet on. And Robert Redford is that to a certain extent. He really didn't do very much to look like Woodward at all. He was just, when you look as good as Robert Redford, why change it? If I look that good, I'd just be Robert Redford all the time as well. So he was from that sort of old school of just being the star and just saying the lines, while Dustin Hoffman was this sort of incoming, method-driven acting that's got to ridiculous extents now, with people sticking on latex prosthetics all over the face to really look like people. But if you look at Hoffman as Bernstein and Bernstein at the same time, crikey, he did a really good job of looking like him, wearing his hair the same way, dressing in the same kind of clothes. So there's a nice little bit of history of movie making in there as well. Old style of film star to the new style of having to really be the person.
That's a really good point. And I think the other thing with the documentary feel of this, and even with, I don't know exactly how this ran, but there are a couple of scenes where there is a lot of noise and dialogue that doesn't have anything to do with the story. So like when all the editors meet, and there's a couple of those, and they talk about every other subject. Also, in terms of filmmaking and choice of filmmaking, I don't think a lot of filmmakers would burn screen time for the characters to talk about something that wasn't the story. Like they really, by them talking about all these other stories that they had, to bring this one in, and again, kick-ass cast, top to bottom, like you couldn't get a better cast.
Yeah, but there's a reason for that, because it shows that at the time they didn't realize how big a story it was. It was just one story amongst many.
Oh no,
So,
I agree that, but yeah. I think what I'm just saying in terms of the filmmaking style, my guess is a contemporary contemporary screenwriter, not William Goldman, who's a genius, but to have it just would have been like, it would have cut to someone saying, we got all these other stories, why do we need this one? And it would all be about the story and not sort of that view. And again, the other thing, and with William Goldman and with the what you're saying about Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford's performances, the style of dialogue and the cross-talking dialogue, very naturalistic dialogue, even in those, Dustin Hoffman as a performer seemed a little more comfortable and natural in those, where it did seem like Redford was, even as an actor, waiting his turn.
Yeah.
It didn't have that like boom, boom, boom flow. And it's a lot more interesting to watch characters. And I don't know if the future of filmmaking is going to have the same kind of, because this is not a short movie. And it's again a why done it and figuring out who the hell's connected to who, but and again, you know what the spoiler alert is before it starts because of history, and but you're rooting for them even though you know they succeed. The way both characters, like, we don't know anything about these characters. There is no exposition about these characters. It is all behavior and dialogue within the story. All we know is one has been there for 9 months and the other one should have got fired a month ago. In terms of, but we don't know their backstories. We don't know really anything else. We know Bernstein's worked there a lot longer, has a lot more experience in the industry. But it's all business, business, business. None of it is girlfriend, wife, kids. No, we just figured these guys are just single, and all they do is work as reporters, and they have nothing else in life. And to some degree, that seems to be the case.
Yeah, well, it's so nice, isn't it? Because nowadays everyone's got to have issues.
Yeah, exactly. Because it would be, it would be the Bernstein character or the Woodward character coming back home and burning off exposition on his wife that he's having a horrible relationship with because he spends all his time at work. And that would be a B story. And she would be so proud when she's sitting at home cooking and he's back typing, and they do a split screen and they're both watching the same thing of Ford being sworn into office, and she would be very proud of him. And again, that's the William Goldman. Look that guy up if you want to know about screenwriting. That guy knows a couple of things and has written a bunch of great. Put his name in, you'll see. But the dialogue, the performances, and the filming style throughout, a lot of locked up stuff. A lot of, we watch everyone talk for a while, and then maybe they cut to one person. It was really, I don't know.
I miss that. There were so many great movie scenes and lots of movies with this cross-cutting dialogue through the 1970s, and it's just gone.
Yeah, but also
there's a lovely scene in Close Encounters like that. Do you remember that bit where they're in the office and they have to get the big globe and to find out where it is, and they're all talking over each other fantastic scene. You really feel like you're there investigating it with them. And then it cuts to the quiet guys, and I know what it is. It's coordinates. Beautiful piece of filmmaking, and yet we never have that nowadays.
Well, and part of it would be the business decision, because they would have to sell that in China, and that would be a nightmare to subtitle. So it would just be words, and you would know what's going on. And with the new Fast and Furious 8th, it's the 8th one, whatever it is, the amount of money that thing is making is. And everyone's saying like it is an absolute schlock fest, like an unadulterated, like they are not even trying to be realistic. They are not even trying to not be a ridiculous action movie. And they're very successful monetarily. And
I'm very proud to say I've not seen any of them, so I don't know what any of them are.
I've only seen the first couple. Well, I saw the trailer for this one is probably worth watching just because you will think it's an SNL sketch. Like you will,
really, is that bad?
It's so, and it's unapologetic. Like it used to be about racing cars, and now it's like international stuff and submarines, and it's so incredibly ridiculous. But it sells millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of tickets.
Yeah, so what's that movie? I mean, Transformers thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd never seen any of those. And so I was acting in it, and so I'll look it up on YouTube and see some clips, and I think, crikey, this is expensive garbage.
Yeah, but the thing
pay
about
money
it,
to go to cinema to watch this, it's terrible.
Right, but that isn't. It's more like movie as amusement park ride, not movie as story. Not that there isn't a story, and there's plenty. Video games tell much bigger stories, and it's a much bigger industry than film. But film is it's hard to, I think. There's more options now, so let's keep that in mind. But in terms of mainstream, or even slightly less mainstream, to have a scene where a bunch of characters are talking over each other, or you're just catching bits of dialogue, I think it's a great way to storytell. It's a great way to get the feel of the scene. It's a great way to get exposition out also, because you have a bunch of people and you're just picking up things. But I don't think it's the norm, anywhere near the norm anymore.
It doesn't help that I very rarely watch modern movies. I think the only modern movie I've watched recently is Beauty and the Beast.
Mm-hmm.
Which, to be fair, is really, really good, and I enjoyed it a lot.
Well, that's nice to hear. It's nice to hear really make a good movie still.
Yeah, I mean, they threw a lot of money at it, and it looks like they threw a lot of money at it, but they came out with the goods. And I was impressed with that. But yeah, there's not much cross-cutting dialogue in that. But there are some lovely acting performances beneath all the clever computer whiz-jiggery. Kevin Kline's wonderful and charming, as you'd expect. Emma Thompson is wonderful and charming, as you'd expect. Hermione Granger, very, very good. And the broken penis from Downton Abbey, very, very good. So good that I think people won't give him credit for it. They won't realise how good he is.
Wow. That's quite the endorsement of that movie.
What's it called, Mr. Broken Penis? So I call him that because the character he played in Downton Abbey it was injured in the war, and his appendage ceased to work. And then after Downton Abbey, he went off to the US to become famous in Hollywood, and now he's got this part. He got the role in the movie, not the part.
Marilyn saying, "Oh my!" I'm guessing you're saying it like George Sakai. So.
But yeah, in it he plays the prince before and after he's the Beast. And the Beast, but the way he plays the Beast, you'd swear it was a different actor. He's that good at it.
That's really cool.
And I think people will think it was a different actor, or they won't realise that all the mannerisms of the Beast were done by him. All the dots on the face and motion capture and stuff.
Wow.
And so they'll just think he's the one at the end, and they won't realise that all that is actually him.
That's really cool.
So go and see Beauty and the Beast. It's fun. It's nice. It's got show tunes. What more do you want? But it doesn't have any cross-cutting dialogue. So we want more dialogue in movies.
Yes.
And less explosions.
And I guess the musical version of All the President's Men is still in the works. But the musical numbers, wow. The other thing about
just to finish that point off, if we look at this dreadful Transformers thing I'm in, so that's space aliens and explosions. Compare that to Close Encounters, which was the big aliens film of 1970. What year was it? 77-ish?
78, yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah, sometime like that. Take all the aliens and the special effects away. It's a fantastic movie with dialogue and acting. Brilliant performances.
Yep.
Fantastic performances. Yeah, I'm not bothered about seeing the glowing lights and the aliens. Just give me the acting in it. Good enough by itself.
And it's really about just getting to the point where they can use the special effects in the story. I mean, not that there isn't some special effects throughout, but if it wasn't for the story and the characters and everything and the performances that are going on, not until you get to the end and they do all the woohoo that it makes sense, where now it's the place to go. It's special effects. And one thing I will say is that for at least the ability for television to have, because special effects on TV were always so bad. It was always, and I understand they didn't have the budgets and they're trying to do CGI stuff and they don't have the time or the money to have someone really do the work well. And it looks like it, but now not that everyone does have the money, but it's the go-to thing to do. But on television, stuff it's not laughable, which is nice.
Yeah. And the budgets are almost movie-like now with all these Netflix and Amazon
coming into it. Yeah. And also the way that they're spending money, they just announced a Martin Scorsese movie that they're going to be making. But they're putting together like a Al Pacino, blanking on actors' names. Anyway, a bunch of well-known actors that Scorsese has worked with before they're going to shoot that. The one thing also with All the President's Men is that, and I don't know how, again, different it'll be for someone watching it now who's younger, who does not know all these actors, because watching this at the time, all of those actors you would have known from something. Like there's no one that, and there was a lot less famous people at that point in history. But watching this story again, and I don't know how much of it is Dustin Hoffman, but I don't feel like I'm watching Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford doing a movie together. Like I'm into the characters. I'm into the two, some of the funniest, there's some really seriously funny stuff in this. And it's just that sort of absurdist in the moment, the actual, like what would be funny in real life, not like written joke, haha, funny. But some of the stuff when they're working together and when they figure out the rhythm of how they're going to get the guy who given the grand jury testimony to name one of the names when they're trying to figure out the initials, and they figure out that they'll just throw it out and then you confirm it back to me and we'll see if he corrects us. And he says, and what if he doesn't? Well, we're screwed. All right. And that's what they go and do, and it works. But all those performances are, and this is, if you count off the cast, this is kind of a big ensemble.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a long movie, and Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford are almost in absolutely every single scene. There's only a couple little taggy scenes where they leave and someone makes a phone call, or they leave and you hear the editor and I guess whoever the political editor, not the national editor, talking about stuff. And again, that was an interesting thing when I think it was the second scene with all the editors, when they have all the cross-talking stuff and everything, and someone mentions this story could get us in a lot of trouble, Watergate, and everyone leaves except for a few of them, and the hustle and bustle and the crosstalk, and we've already seen this scene once, so we kind of get a feel for what happens to it, for that to then be sort of repeated where the scene starts closer to the end of the meeting, everyone else leaves, and there's this quiet when they talk about, like, what do you mean this could be bad for us. What, you know, we could get in trouble. What does that mean? I don't know how that conversation happens now for somebody in the media. Because when you are talking about, you know, Nixon was one screwed up paranoid individual.
Yeah.
and Trump makes him seem quaint.
Yes, that's right. It does.
It really does. I mean, Nixon's just, and I guess what it is, it's because he has never been a politician, so he can't even, and he couldn't act to begin with, so he can't act like a president. He can only act like who he is, which is a piece of garbage.
Yeah.
With all due respect.
Yeah, at least Nixon was an operator and he knew how to, where the rods and levers were in Washington, and knew how to pull them and manipulate them. Trump doesn't. He just stalks around in his underpants talking to his mirror.
That seems to be what's happening. Again, the whole thing still seems like a dream. But
here's a random odd thing about the movie.
Yeah.
Redford and Hoffman are actually older than Woodward and Bernstein. They're both 70. At
the time that they made the movie?
Well, both. Redford was born in 36, Hoffman in 37, Woodward in 43, and Bernstein in 44.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So when they made the movie in 75, you know, they're considerably older than Woodward and Bernstein were at the time. You know, Woodward and Bernstein were 29 and 30 in 72.
Yep. So really,
the age difference is the same. You know, there was 1 year between them. It's the same year between them in the actors, and just by fluke.
Wow, that's really cool. And it's, again, for this, reading the DVD cover, it says the most devastating detective story of this century. I think I know what the one is going to be for this century. I think I know. I just don't know how it's going to go down. I don't think it's going to be as neat as this. And also, this is a really hard story to turn into a movie. When you know, again, you start with a spoiler. You already know how it all works out. There's no surprises in that regard. But you're watching, and it's long, and it should be, on its face, tedious to watch. And it's so not. The thing just zooms. And it really is just a bunch of people talking. Literally, the entire movie. Like, there isn't a gun drawn, nothing. There's no exciting chase scene. There's a couple of running and looking scared, but no real chase scene. And it is just talk, character. And it works in a way that really adept filmmaking, screenwriting, acting, all the rest of it. And if you've never seen All the President's Men, or you haven't seen it in a while, especially if you haven't watched it in the last, say, 100 days-ish, really watch it, because the parallels to what's going on now, and, you know, when they're talking about what everyone is doing in the Republican Party, and they're talking about, like, the Attorney General who's running this fund and knowing about it, and then seeing what's going on with Jeff Sessions, I'm just like, man, the parallels are just, it's almost like this is a caricature of the Nixon White House.
It's like Nixon, but worse. It's distilled essence of cow products. It's extraordinary.
Yeah.
But in terms of movie making, when was the last movie about, you know, an intellectual pursuit like this? Everything's got to have action in nowadays.
Yeah, I don't know how. It would be interesting to try, in terms of I guess in terms of what's a monetary success and what's an actual success is two different things. But I'm wondering what movies that have played in this realm, fictional or otherwise, can pull this off.
Oh, I've only seen a bit of it. There was the Julia Roberts one where she played an investigative reporter, or was it a lawyer? Something to do with mining or something.
I don't recall that one.
Oh, I'll have to look it up now.
but you're right. I don't think that there's any, because it's just hard to sell. It's hard to sell to an audience. Like, who wants to watch a bunch of guys making phone calls and knocking on people's doors and then arguing with the boss and then knocking on more people and then typing. And there's more phone calls and there's some people talking face to face and they talk to each other. Then there's some typing. That's pretty much the entire movie, and it's really interesting to watch.
Especially when phone calls take so long to do.
Yep. And it's also great when there's a lot. They do a couple of things. In the scenes where they have all the crosstalk and they have a lot of busy stuff, they also have scenes where there's like nothing happening. When there's a scene where Robert Redford keeps getting phone calls from a secretary, and he's typing, and she's in the background, slightly out of focus, and it happens once, and he takes a phone call and he goes back to typing, and you can see her moving, and he gets another call and has to do it again, and again, when I think of contemporary filmmaking standards, they would never have done that. That scene would never. It would have been just the one phone call to get to the phone call. That's the important phone call, not the rhythm and the feel of a newsroom, which must be really different now.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, then they were still printing with hot lead. Nowadays it's just people on the move filing copy from wherever they are. There is no newsroom really. Journalists are just on the move with a laptop or the iPad or whatever. The
I remember
itself doesn't exist.
When I was taking photojournalism classes in the 80s, one of my professors, so this is like 85, 86, one of my professors said, in the future, you guys will just go to a payphone and you'll put your phone up to the phone. I mean, your camera up to the phone and send all the pictures right from the payphone. That's how it'll work. And kinda, it's kind of true. And now no film. Like the how that changes.
That reminds me of a sci-fi book I read some years ago. I think it may have been by Asimov or Arthur C. Clarke, one of the leading ones. Oh, it was Erin Brockovich, by the way, the movie I was thinking of.
Oh yeah. I know the person who is responsible for that movie existing. My friend Pam Dumond, she's a writer. Look her up, Pamela Dumond, Dumond. She was treating Erin Brockovich. She's a chiropractor, and she was also treating a producer at a movie studio. And so she kept hearing all these stories from Erin Brockovich, and she said, "Erin, would you mind if I told this producer about what you've been through and everything?" And she was like, "Yeah, sure." And she did, and that's why they made the movie. Like, she's in the credits, thanked for pretty much discovering the Erin Brockovich story.
A movie made because of bad backs.
Exactly. Chiropractor kismet, I guess you would call that. Also, name my new band.
Now, this book that I read, it was about set in the future at a time when teleportation was a reality, but done with things that are basically like phone booths. You go into your teleportation booth, dial the number, and you zap to the booth on the other side of the world.
Sounds like the Matrix almost.
Yeah. And news was done with roving reporters beaming the story in live. And the story starts with a riot where something's misunderstood that this reporter is reporting on, and then a flash riot develops because people overreact to it, and people start teleporting into the area. And so the reporter gets fired because he's caused this riot, and so then the story progresses with him trying to work out what exactly has gone on and how the whole system is working. But to some extent, we've got to that with, not just the likes of CNN being everywhere 24/7, but the citizen journalism of Periscope and Twitter and everything else being 24/7. And the effect of that is that then people react to that and jump on it. And we've had situations with street disturbances coming out of people reacting to things they've seen on unfiltered news. And so that must have been written 50 years ago, that story. And it's really just becoming true in the last year or two, which is it's quite interesting.
It is interesting. Especially when you can, all the stuff that you can do with Facebook advertising that I know about. I've run a little bit of Facebook advertising, but the amount of information you have access, anyone has access to, in terms of trying to figure out who do you want to put your message in front of and have them agree with that message, be the person that you want to hear that message. That is what takes out, and and the whole fake news thing too, takes out the power of the Washington Post, takes out the check and balance of what the media was sort of designed. I mean, it's a business. It's always been a business, and it's never been a perfect business, and it has always been one that was manipulated and will continue to be, as we can say, because it's the one thing I just wonder how this story would go down now, how the with all the technology, the way everyone's connected now, how all of that will happen. Because watching this, it seemed like they, at least in the portrayals, some of this was people who were afraid to say anything because they were afraid something bad was going to happen to them. And some people who wanted to say something because they genuinely saw that this was wrong and they wanted to stop it. I don't know how much of that is around anymore. I don't know if that from both the media and from the government, any government. Like, I don't, because everything's so interconnected. How do you police it? How do you slow everything down, not allow a president to bomb countries until he explains what the deal is with him in Russia? I thought that was kind of the way this should work. Seemed a little safer, but that's not the way it works.
But looking on the bright side, the Watergate does remind us that you can't get away with it forever. You can't fool all the people all the time.
I hope so. I mean, that is definitely part of what the good of all this is potential is. It's in the future. It's not now. And I don't know how many lessons learned are going to be remembered and carried forth, because this whole Nixon thing wasn't that long ago.
No.
At all. And again, the other thing I thought in terms of filmmaking was great, the way that they used file footage, video playing on the televisions, as both kind of like that's the way the film opened, that's the way they got the information going. We didn't see the press room or any of the newspaper story till, I don't know, a good 7 minutes into the story, something like that. Between sort of seeing the Nixon stuff, then seeing the burglary, and then it finally shows up in the Washington Post. And also the way the movie ends, where you see them, and it's a great jump cut because they go to Ben Bradley, the editor's house. They're at that point, Deep Throats told them that they're in danger for their lives. They're being watched. Their things may be bugged. And so they want him to talk out in the yard, and he kind of gives them the, go for it, but don't screw this up sort of speech. And the next thing is a really, really long shot of just the two of them typing. It's one shot, but they kind of split the screen between a television on one side of the shot and the two of them typing on the other. And it's a slow zoom, and it's nothing but the slow zoom, and it's Nixon getting inaugurated and
reinaugurated.
Reinaugurated, right? Winning re-election, and then that runs for a really, 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 really long time, and then they cut, and this is what I thought was interesting: the 21 cannon salute or whatever they're running that you hear in the background becomes a part of the sound mix when they turn from the typewriters to the sort of teletype machine that shows up on when a wire story would get sent to all the newspapers. It would show up on a machine that it was like a fax machine whose job was just to get all the stories. And so as each headline comes in about guilty, sentences of all the names of all these people that we've heard throughout this whole movie, you hear the cannons in the background and you hear the typing at the same time. It's not subtle, but I thought it was really, really well done. And a great way to wrap up the story, because again, we know how it ends. So where do you tap out and how do you end all of this? Because how this Watergate itself, just all the trial stuff and the breakdowns, another movie.
Yeah, I mean, they threw away half of the novel to make the movie, and they made the right decision to do it.
Yeah,
they concentrated on the important part of it.
But I just think sometimes it's just too much story to tell, and when they try to tell too much story, it there's no breathing room, and for this to work, and again, not a short movie at all. In terms of running time, what is the running time?
What is it, 2 hours 20 or something?
Something like that.
Or no, even longer actually. No, it's 153 minutes or something.
Something like that. But it's long, and it doesn't. Yeah. And again, it doesn't feel like it. Next week, we haven't completely decided what the movie is, but I'll put it out. We do have choices, and what we're doing now is, because Matthew's in the UK and Tachi, Colleen, and I are in the US. We're trying to find titles that we have access to, as opposed to going on YouTube, because we burnt out a lot of YouTube stuff, and not the quality is not that great. And we don't get you're not going to find all the President's Men sitting on YouTube doing nothing.
And also all the President's Men, I didn't watch it for this, was, I know the movie so well because I've seen it so many times.
Oh yeah.
So it does free us up to talk about movies that all of us or some of us know really well.
Yeah, and that was the one thing. And Marilyn's saying Metropolis is on Netflix. Excellent. There was one thing when I posted this on Facebook, I had a lot of comments, and a lot of people are like, I know that movie. I've seen that movie. So that's pretty cool. So it will definitely be a movie you have heard of, and hopefully the whole crew will be here.
And also watch there's a documentary made with Bernstein and Woodward relatively recently, talking about all the President's Men. I think it was made about 5 or 10 years ago. Well worth watching. It's about 40 minutes or an hour long.
Very cool. Well, we'll have to look that one up. And again, Marilyn, Matthew, or Matt, thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for hanging out, Matthew. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.